America may be on the brink of redefining one of its most fundamental institutions, marriage. But even as some activists try to change it, a new generation is standing up to defend traditional marriage. Heather Sells has that story.
Gay, straight, black, white.
Supporters of gay marriage have reached a major goal: 2 cases before the Supreme Court. That platform and recent wins on the state level provide new momentum for their cause, but a younger generation is emerging to defend traditional marriage. Ryan Anderson is making the case at the influential Heritage Foundation, where he argues that redefining marriage makes it more about adult desires than children's needs. He recently defended his views on CNN.
If you really understood why the government does need to get involved, why it does need to be legal on a federal level, if you really understood that, there is no way that you would sit there and say what you are saying right now. So I understand.
Why do you assume that I'm ignorant? I mean, you assume that I just don't know. I don't assume anything badly about you.
No.
I just think we disagree. And President Obama himself has said that there are people of goodwill and sound mind on both sides of this issue. I agree with the president.
Well, Ryan joins us now to talk about the debate over redefining marriage. That was an interesting exchange. And Susie was really coming after you.
Sure.
And why the... you can't help but watch that piece and see hostility there and trying to demean the opinion that you hold about marriage. Why is that?
It's a great question. And I think a lot of people view if you're in favor of traditional marriage or in favor of marriage as a union of a man and a woman, that must mean that you're anti-gay or that somehow you're against something else. And even the first question that Piers Morgan put to me is like, why are you against gay marriage? And I think what we have to do is do a better job of explaining what we're for. And we're for marriage understood as a union of a man and a woman because that can unite them as husband and wife to then be in the type of relationship to be mother and father to the kids that they create. And there's something unique and especially important about that type of a relationship. And I think partly it's that during the past 40 years, heterosexuals acting on a bad liberal ideology have made a mess of marriage in America. And then when you see how marriage is falling apart, a lot of people say, well, why can't we just do one step further of weakening marriage? But the collapse of marriage has been...
the culture of divorce that we live in?
Divorce, cohabitation, single parenting, premarital sex. I mean, start the list and, keep going. There's so many various things that heterosexuals have done to damage the marriage culture. And then a host of social ills, the consequences of this, and particularly for the well-being of children, for our welfare state, for all sorts of things that have been negatively impacted by the collapse of marriage.
Why don't we learn the lessons from history? You go back in history and you look at Greek culture. Greek culture wasn't an anti-gay culture. No. And yet in Plato's Symposium, he says gays don't marry because that's not a family. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but he does say gays don't marry. They don't do that. And so why have we sort of abandoned that as a a point in our argument that traditional family and family units are the bulwark of any society?
We cite that in our book. We point out that Plato and Aristotle and Cicero, as well as the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims, and Enlightenment thinkers like Immanuel Kant, Eastern thinkers like Gandhi, they disagreed about a lot in their philosophy, their theologies, their political theory, and yet they all agreed that marriage was a male-female relationship because a union of a man and a woman can produce a child, and children need a mother and a father. And so while they disagreed about all sorts of other things, including the morality of same-sex acts, they agreed that what marriage is about uniting a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, a mother and a father.
Supreme Court's taken this issue up. You got a prediction on how they're going to rule?
It's a fool's bargain to predict what the Supreme Court will do. But the law here is pretty clear. The Supreme Court should uphold both Proposition 8 and the Defense of Marriage Act. Our Constitution does not require the redefinition of marriage. Marriage laws that reflect the truth about what marriage is are wholly constitutional. And citizens have the authority to vote about what marriage is. Unelected judges should not be redefining marriage.
But hasn't there been a whole link of Supreme Court cases going all the way to Griswold? Once you find a right of privacy around sex, then the logical extension after the Supreme Court ruled that homosexual sex is protected as well, doesn't that then lead to, since it's protected activity, that if they want to marry, now that's constitutionally protected as well?
I don't think that follows, because think about what they're asking to do here. They're not asking for the freedom to live and to love how they want to. They already have that. In all 50 states, two people of the same sex can live with each other and love each other. They can go to a liberal church and have a wedding ceremony performed. They can work for a liberal business and have marriage benefits if the church wants to and if the business wants to. It's very much a live and let live. What they're asking is for the Supreme Court to redefine marriage and then have government use the coercive power of law to force people like you and me and our religious communities and our businesses to recognize a same-sex relationship as if it's a marriage. So the coercion aspect here and the liberty aspect here works in the exact opposite direction than what the media normally tells. Oh, you already see photographers and florists and innkeepers.
Yeah, I mean, that lawsuit is already out the door and gaining momentum. Well, if the Supreme Court does rule that there's a constitutional protection for this, do you see it opening the door again to polygamy, what they now call polyamorous relationships, and those being recognized as marriage?
That's interesting. Justice Sotomayor, so one of the liberal justices and one of the Obama appointees, asked that question during oral arguments of the opposing lawyer, the lawyer in favor of gay marriage, and he didn't have a persuasive response. She said, if there's a fundamental right to marriage, what limits could the state place on that right? And she specifically asked the question of the number of participants. Because if marriage is just about a community of love, whatever consenting adults choose to love, that can come in as many sizes and shapes as consent comes in. And so if you say there's a fundamental right to marry the person you love, why not the people you love? If justice demands same-sex marriage for the same-sex couple, why not the same-sex throuple? A throuple is a three-person couple. We discovered that term while doing research for the book.
Or a quadruple.
You can just quartet, quintet. You can keep going down the list. And we have not heard a person. We can give an answer for why it's true if you agree that it's a man-woman relationship. It's one man, one woman, the two halves of humanity. That's how we got to monogamy. But once you say that's irrational, that the male-female thing is irrational, it's not clear how you keep monogamy or sexual exclusivity or permanency.
When you go back in our history, Utah wasn't allowed to become a state until they outlawed polygamy.
Right.
That was a fundamental. If you want to be part of the United States, you cannot have polygamy legal in your state. So if we get away from that principle, where do you see this going?
There's a lawsuit right now in Utah arguing for a constitutional right to practice polygamy. And I was at New York University a couple weeks ago debating one of the professors there. And she says it's hypocritical that we criminalize polygamy and that we should have multi-person marriages. And there was an article that same day in Slate magazine, an influential liberal magazine, arguing in favor of polygamy. So my fear is that the slippery slope isn't quite a slope. It's actually a level playing field, that once you eliminate the complementarity of a man and a woman, more or less everything else about marriage falls by the wayside.
All right. The book is What is Marriage? Man and Woman, a Defense. Ryan's book's available wherever books are sold. Ryan, thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks for having me.